right, guys. Welcome to the Buff Show. Today we have Mr. Benjamin Larsen with us
Hi.
today. Do people ever call you Benjamin?
Usually when I'm in trouble,
Okay.
like court of law, moms and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Does your wife ever call you Benjamin?
no. She calls me other things besides Ben, but never Benjamin.
Nice. So Ben and I wanted to get him on today. Ben is an agent at Mountain Buff. I wanted to get him on so he could tell a story because I think there's a lot of things that we can pull out of Ben.
What not to do.
Yeah, what not to do and a few what to do's. So we'll dive into this. Ben and I go way back to high school.
So in high school, Peyton was too cool for me. So
That is
after I
not
got
true.
over that, no, we had a lot of the same friends, but we really didn't ever hang out until after high school. Really, the first time I met Peyton was my wife was stalking him on Facebook.
No, well, we were in welding class.
Well, yeah,
and stuff.
yeah, but like,
we never hung out.
yeah,
though.
we weren't like BFFs.
Yeah, like today.
Like today, we're like,
Yeah.
But so he came up to sell our house, and he was like all professional, and it was really weird. And I'm just the opposite. I can be professional, but I really like to just be normal. Like just I have a hard time being professional because I'm a goofball. I'm sarcastic. I'm hypocrite. It's just it's hard to play that part. But that's part of the reason why I started getting into real estate. Is met Peyton. He sold our house. Saw the process. Saw what he did, and I was like, all right, let's do this.
Well, there's a lot more to that story.
Pre-story, how we got.
So
I guess so. Basically, Peyton wanted me to come on today to talk about, see if anybody could take away from our life, mine and my wife's. Basically, if they could take away something that could be informational or helpful for them.
Well, let me tell you what I saw with you. So Ben reaches out. He's like, "Hey, I want to sell my house," and I hadn't talked to Ben in a long
Couple
years.
years. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, what year was it when you sold your house?
16, 17?
Okay, we graduated in 2009. So we're talking
5, 6 years
yeah,
at
yeah.
least.
So I hadn't seen him in a long time. We hadn't talked. He just reached out, was like, "Hey, thinking about selling my house." Really cool house. But the story behind that house, I was like, oh my gosh. I've never had a deal where their house burns down and you rebuilt it.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of
Launched us forward.
Yeah.
It was the blessing in disguise.
yeah. So let's jump into that story.
So
You burnt your house down.
my wife burned her house down, meth lab in the basement, tipped over. No, we had a bad fireplace. Whoever originally installed our fireplace put in the wrong kind of chimney. Basically, it's too thin. And over the years, it finally caught our chimney on fire, which burned the rest of the house. But it was Shadley that started the fire, so it was her that started the house on fire.
So she's to thank
She's
for
an
all
art.
your
She's
successes.
an arson. So how it worked out is we had to rebuild our house. We had to tear it down to nothing. And really what kind of got us started is I was in construction. I was an electrician, so I had a lot of friends in the trade, and we were able to put a ton of sweat equity into our home.
Mm-hmm.
The market started turning up just a little bit, not like it was in the 2000s, but 16, 17, 18, it was just a slow uptick.
It was heating up every year.
Right.
Got hotter and hotter.
And we had that. We basically went from a house that was built in 89, I think, to a brand new home.
And beautiful. Like you build it right on top of the same foundation.
And then we actually added more foundation. We had a sacrifice. So they give you X amount of money to build your house.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people told us, in the industry, they said, hey, build your structure how you want. You can fluff the rest later. So we painted all the walls and the ceiling and the trim. Everything was the same color. Light fixtures and stuff we had, for the most part, just a plastic light fixture.
Mm-hmm.
So we really kind of was looking for the future. We wanted to get those bones in, and we ended up with a beautiful home. That's what kind of got us launched into where we are today, is because we sacrificed so much at the start to even like money we were getting for like our clothing and different things we actually put into the home.
Yeah.
And then we ended up selling that home, and that was what slingshotted us.
Did you have any money left over from the insurance? Like from the claims, like after you had rebuilt it, there was money left over?
So basically after, and don't take this as crazy, but after you burn your house down, you get a lot of money, and you think, oh man, I've got all this cash, I can take on the world. But you stop to think about, you have to replace, we had, our 3 kids at the time. We didn't have Frank yet. We had to buy socks and underwear and hangers and every shirt and pants and
dishes and kitchenware, everything.
Sheets, bedding, pillows. So it added up fast, and it started sucking down. So me and my wife looked at each other and said, okay, we have X amount of dollars. I'm like, here's $10,000 for you. That's for your clothes, your makeup, anything you want. And it seems like a lot, but it burns up really fast.
Oh, for sure.
And then I took same thing, and then we told ourselves we're going to take the rest, and that's what's going to kind of go into either the home and the future. So we put a lot of our contents money for our personal belongings back into the structure of our home.
Dang.
So we didn't really have walking around cash left over,
Yeah.
but we definitely had a lot of equity.
So then you called me because that, like, had that not happened, like you had a 1980s home before, but when we sold that house, it was like a brand new couple year built home. I think
we still had to list it as a 1989 home when we sold it because technically that's how, but it was brand new.
Yeah, rebuilt. And it showed amazing. What made you guys want to sell?
It was actually, so I'm a very fly by the seat of my pants guy. My friend sold his house, a little tiny house he bought in Morgan. It was Jason Kerrigan, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to sell my house, and I'm going to buy a lot, and I'm going to build. And I looked at my wife, and I'm like, yeah, let's do that too. Like, why not? And we lived in Croydon, and our kids were starting to get active, so we were with sports and friends hanging out. We basically lived in Morgan, and we would drive to Croydon to go to sleep because all of my kids' friends were down there. So we decided it was time. Loved the house, but we need to get a little bit closer to what we did our activities. So that was kind of the main indicators. But it was mostly Jason selling his and had some FOMO, and I didn't want to miss out.
Well, in that house, because it was so new on an acre in Croydon, had a little like creek in the back and everything, like a sweet property, like probably really hard to leave. But I imagine you guys had a ton of equity when you sold. You were able to pull that out. So we ended up selling it within
28 days, I think.
Yeah.
We listed and were moved out in 28 days.
So then let's dive into it, because while I was there, Ben's like talking real estate, asking questions, investing stuff, and his eyes are just lighting up. Like he's just like, interesting.
More FOMO.
Yeah.
So then Peyton started talking about doors and rentals, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got all this stuff. It's like putting it on red and gambling it, but there's 99 pieces that are red on the board and only one black one. So real estate, it just intrigued me because it was like this: if you can sacrifice to get enough fun tokens to play the game that is real estate, it's almost a guaranteed win if you do your research and you stay smart. So that was the biggest thing, is FOMO again. I saw what Peyton was doing. I wanted a piece of it, and we haven't looked back since.
So what did you do? We sold your house.
Sold our house.
And then Ben's like a freaking wildfire, just like...
Right. Well, and here's the big thing. You've got to lie to your wife. I told my wife, we will have foundation in the ground on a lot we bought in Morgan. We're going to actually build next to our friends, Jason and Nicole Kerrigan. And I'm like, within a year, we'll have a foundation in the ground, and we'll be building. And then I'm like, hey, we're going to have to rent a little bit. And I'm like, within 2 years, we're going to have this foundation in the ground.
Well, where did you rent? Where did you go live?
Townhomes in Mahogany.
You didn't rent those, though.
Yeah, we rented for a year.
You were renting.
Well, we were renting while we were going to build our home.
Yeah.
So I told my wife, and she knew better. She saw right through it. And then it was like, hey, I don't want to live in a subdivision. I want to do these rentals. So there was 2 in that same subdivision we lived in. I mean, we were paying $1,400 a month. And that's cheap now, but
yeah.
So they came up for sale, and I basically asked my wife, I'm like, why don't we buy these with all of our other money, and then we'll live in one of those for a few years, then we'll build. 4 years, I tell her now, after we've bought these 2 rentals.
We're going to build.
We're going to build. We're going to live in these for a couple more years.
But those are big townhomes.
They're big townhomes. They were 5-bedroom, 3.5 bath, big townhomes.
Yeah. Well, so you sold your house, you bought a lot, and then I can't remember. It wasn't that long after.
Then we bought 2 townhomes.
Ben's like, hey, I came across these 2 townhomes. I don't even know how you found them. The guy's like willing to seller finance you on them.
The one of them. Yep, Shaylee bought one, and I had a seller finance on the other.
It was crazy. Like, they weren't on the market. They weren't listed or anything.
Didn't. Nope.
And he pieced together a deal there. I think at the time, because it seemed like it was a lot of money, but they're big townhomes. Like, how many square feet?
So each one of them were 20, I think 600 square feet. There's 3 stories, so basement, main, and upstairs.
That's big for a townhome. Most townhomes, you're like 1,500, 2,000 square feet max.
Well, and 3 full bathrooms and a half bath, and 4 or possibly even 5 bedroom. So I mean, it was just kind of a no-brainer.
So next thing I know, he's buying that. Because you called me on it, and I'm like, I don't know, because Because I think in my heart, I felt like there were better investments you could make in like the Weber County area, like a duplex or something like that. But Ben was just like gung ho on these.
Because I had to buy them because remember I was lying to my wife, telling her that we were going to stay in Morgan, and that was a big thing. We had to stay in Morgan.
So you bought those, moved into one of them, rented the other one out, and you stayed there for
about 2 years, just over 2 years.
2 years. So meanwhile, after that, like probably the next year,
it was the very next year.
The next year, Ben's like, "Hey, there's this house in Morgan, right across from the grocery store. It's like, what did they have it listed at?
$250.
$250.
Yep.
Why don't you offer him $200,000?
I think it was $180. $195 is what I asked. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And
he didn't say okay. He's like, geez, man, you're gonna freaking lowball him that bad?
Yeah. And sure enough, they end up accepting. Like, did they accept that offer?
They accepted that, and then another price reduction.
Yeah.
So I think we ended up getting it for like $185 in Morgan.
It was a sweet deal. It had like a big shop in the back and everything, and. So, but then Ben buys that. So in a matter of 2 years, he has a lot, 2 townhomes, and that house. And I think when did you sell the lot? Because at some point
at this point, my wife has realized that we're never building a home and are going to be renters for the rest of our lives. So we ended up selling the lot to actually, and this kind of goes to that, like, you really start learning how to sacrifice and play the game and, hold out here so you can splurge over here.
Right.
What had happened is a guy I was leasing shop space from in Morgan, his son wanted to build, and I made good money. I mean, I think I made $20,000 on the lot in a year and a half, 2 years holding on to it. But now this kid, he bought it. His dad gave me a year free rent for my shop where I was taking my electrical business out of.
Dang. And you made some money.
And I made $20,000.
Yeah.
But now his son, he built the house on it, and he bought it from me for I think $125 or something like that with that shop lease. And he built his house for $200 on it. Did everything himself, painted everything that he could do, and I wired.
So he's
it
into
him.
it like $350 maybe
$400 max. Yeah. It's now a $700,000 house.
Yeah.
A kid's 21, 22.
It's crazy.
But same thing, he sacrificed. They had to go in and paint. It's all about.
This is a game of sacrifice, really, to get started. It really is. You got to be like, hey, I'm going to delay gratification here in order to acquire, because you didn't want to live in a townhome. No. You didn't want to do any of that, especially coming from like a 1 acre lot in Croydon. Like,
where my kids had my kids could shoot guns out, fish, swim the creek. It was amazing.
Yeah. Pee out your back door. Like, you just had everything you needed there.
I mean, you can do that in the townhomes too. You just got to be, that's how you get on a list.
You just got to be careful.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
So after that, then Ben calls, maybe not even a year later, you bought a property in the UNS.
Yep, bought a cabin in the UNS.
So now you're up to, what's that, 4?
4.
And then after that, we want to get out of the townhome, and you're looking at other homes. So he was still running an electrical company at this time, and we looked at a few other options, maybe just this one. Like this one.
Well, it came up Line Creek. Yeah. I'm like, hey, this is the only one in my price range. Because I'm at this point, I've spent all my fun tokens from my Croydon house, right? So now we're running on borrowed time. We've leveraged out the nose. We've learned the game of mortgages and how basically if you sign on a piece of paper, they give you money.
Well, but you would rent them out, and then you'd show that money on taxes, and then you take it from liability to like, hey, here's another like business I own that like runs and operates and actually is cash flowing. Because now you look back at those townhomes you bought, and you're like way in the positive. And the rents are way higher than your payments.
Way higher, almost double. But I think every month as that appreciation going up, I'd call Peyton, like, hey, Peyton, I think I want to sell these townhomes. I want to cash in. I'm ready to do this. And he's like, you've got to be patient. Part of that, same thing, sacrifice now for gratification later. I wanted the quick gratification.
Yeah. And I was like, are you in the long-term game or this short-term? Because like if you sell, then what are you going to do? You're like, I'm going to go buy more units. And I'm like, where are you going to find something that cash flows what you're getting and has, what's your interest rate on those?
Like a 2.9.
Yeah, under 3%.
On both.
And like, where are you going to find that good of terms? And so he ended up hanging on to him.
I think because Peyton guilted me into it.
I think you still mention it maybe once a year. Except now, I'm like, hey, you should sell those, and you're like, no, I like them.
Right? Yeah, these ones are good. They're solid. And one day I will. One day that comfort, I'm gonna have to give that up and go back out on the lam again. And,
right.
But it was after I bought my Croydon house, you finally looked at me and you went, why don't you just get your real estate license?
No, your Line Creek house.
Or excuse me, my Line Creek house.
Yeah.
And you're like, why don't you just get your real estate license and do it yourself?
Yeah. Because like we're talking, he had bought 6 properties in a matter of
3 years.
3 years. Like just insane growth. A lot of it you did with, you were running a business. Your wife has W-2 income, but you didn't.
Right.
So like that's not easy to qualify for all these loans. But Ben understood if I buy one, live in it, and then like rent it out, and then like this other one, I'll just get an investment loan, and then I can not have to live in it. I just put more money down.
Well, and then at that point, the investment loans. I mean, you were getting investment loans at 3.5%, 4%,
Right.
which was killer.
Yeah.
And after you own them for a while, you can refi. And, they were giving money away for a second.
Yeah.
It was the perfect storm. I mean, my situation was 50% luck, 20% knowledge and skill that I knew, and then the rest was my wife. Honestly, it was because I couldn't. She ran everything, and I just gambled.
Yeah.
And she made it happen. So.
Well, and then since then, this year you just bought another one, or end of last year.
Yeah.
So you have the two townhomes, the one in front of the grocery store, Line Creek, the cabin, and then this one. So you're up to 6 now.
6 now.
6 in a matter of super fast. I started, like me and Ben are racing now because I think I'm at 7.
Right.
I just barely bought one, but we were tied for a minute. But I started back in like 2012 is when I bought my first house. And then 14 is when I got my license and was like actively investing. So like the amount of what you acquired in the past like 6 years is not even that. 5 years is impressive. Very impressive. And like over one a year.
I do want to point out, like, this isn't because I was filthy rich and had all this. It was the house helped us get started. And then you know how many times I called the lender and we talked? And they're like, no.
Yeah.
They're like, right now it's not in the cards.
Right.
But they give me a pathway, right?
Do you want to tell them how you got this last one?
On
your truck?
Oh, yeah. So I didn't have any cash. I had $0 cash, right? I had great debt to income because all my rentals are cash flowing right now. And you need 20% down for an investment loan. And that's the hardest part, I think, is getting that 20% because it's a lot of money. Well, I come to find out that they'll loan on my truck. Basically, I had a paid off diesel truck that apparently those things are like gold. So I refied my big truck, just basically got a loan on it, took the cash and bought
cash
a house.
out refinance on the truck.
I had the debt to income ratio, but I didn't have the cash. So I took a loan on a truck and bought a house.
Pretty sweet.
So
I love that when you're like, your assets are paying for your liabilities.
Right.
Like if you're going to go out and buy a new car, new truck or something, like just before that, plan ahead, buy a rental property or something, use that cash flow to then make the payments on your car or pay for it or whatever.
Well, and it offsets because they always say the first one's the hardest. Nobody trusts you on that first one. The banks don't care about the income it has. But after you have that first one, well, actually on this one, Peyton, I remember Shelby Montgomery, she told me we closed our loan and she called me up and said, hey, your debt to income is back to the same thing now because with your rents, it'll cover that mortgage. Do you want to do another loan? If you do one in 30 days, we don't have to pull your credit. Basically said, hey, let's do another one. If you can find one in the next 30 days, we don't have to do all this paperwork again. Let's just do it.
Let's just go out and buy another one.
I didn't have that 20% though. Otherwise, she got me all excited. But it's the first one's the hardest.
Yeah.
After the first one, they start looking at you as a business and they understand that you can do it. And the more you have, the more willing the banks are allowed to see that money that they generate.
So let's be real with people. Any of these properties, the day you closed on them, were you like, oh man, this is a home run, like I'm stoked? Or was each one you're like, man, like this is market's high, rates are kind of like, it seems like, walk us through them.
So the townhomes, those ones were all right because we lived in one. The other side already had a renter in them, but they were just covering, they weren't home runs because...
Were you making a bunch of cash flow, or was
it
basically covering?
I was technically making on the one we had to pay because we lived in.
Yeah.
And then the other side, I was making $200 a month. But our HOA, on just the mortgage, but our HOA was $115.
So you're 70.
I was making $75
$85 a month,
cash flow. But furnace filter, so basically they were paying for themselves.
Yeah. It wasn't a home run.
It wasn't
Like,
a home run.
The second you need a new carpet or a new roof or flooring or whatever, the fridge goes out.
Yep.
That's coming out of your funds.
But over the years, those ones have become the home runs. The house in Morgan by the grocery store, that one was crazy. That one was a home run. The only thing about that one is it was bad. Like the back half of the house, it was a total flip.
Yeah. You gutted it and redid just about everything.
Everything, sheetrock. The only thing I didn't have to redo is they had just recently redone the bathroom. So we redid everything, put a new furnace in it. We put about 35 grand into that house. But same thing, the timing was great and a lot of luck on our side. That's another thing. But you can never get lucky unless you actually try. So you got to get out there and try it.
Yeah.
And then this one we're in right now is probably my worst one. But the rents will pay for itself.
Right.
I got like a 6.1% interest on it.
When did you buy this one?
Like I waited until the rates were really high and the price was really high, and then I was like, "Yeah, it's time. Let's buy a house."
And how much rent have you collected on it?
Well, we've had it for about 4 months now.
Yeah.
And we're just getting ready to paint.
Yeah.
I knew I needed to do something. I was kind of sitting idle. I was at a change in my life recently. I sold my electrical company because a buddy of mine, I told him if he ever, pardon my French, nutted up and got his brokerage license and went out on his own.
Oh, me. Gotcha.
Yeah, him. If he ever nutted up and got his brokerage license, went out on his own, I would get my real estate license and come sell houses for him. Didn't know what that entailed, but he did it, and then it all just kind of happened, came to fruition, and I haven't looked back since, and it's been awesome. So,
and you sold your electrical company?
Gave it away. I gave my electrical company away, and yeah, podcasting. Look at me. I'm on Instagram now. Look me up. I hate social media. Like I'm sweating right now, nervous, but
you're crushing it.
Like I enjoy it. Why
in Ben's Ben just started, so this year. We're already into February. You've already closed 3 deals. Mm-hmm. You got more coming. Like I've closed 2.
Winning.
Yep. So he's crushing it. Like he's a natural salesperson. He's great with people. He has a ton of friends that he watches out for, and it's a great industry for him. But looking back, growing up, I never would have guessed, one, that I would be an agent. Never would have crossed my mind. And then 2, that we'd be here together, like doing this. It's crazy how the world
brings you in and out of people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see you go from, because like that's like me right now being like, hey, I'm going to go be an electrician and start an electrical business. Because Ben, I always tell Ben, you're not working for me. You're building this own. The business is Ben. Like people work with you not because of the brokerage, not because of me, but it's because of you and they want to. Like the brokerage is just a place for you to hang your license and work out of. Your 1099, like it's your separate. We want to tell people your business name?
Well, that's so some of my friends from back in the early days out of high school, Flog Real Estate is actually the LLC in which I operate under, and that's the other cool thing is it's like Peyton says he's not our boss, but he's kind of a slave driving jerk.
Yeah,
but. Really, at the end of the day, you are your own company, your own LLC, your own entity. We use Mountain Buff at least I use it as a tool. You know, they provide a bunch of stuff for us, but honestly, I still own my own business.
Right.
I'm my own boss. If I want to sleep in, I can. Mm-hmm. You don't get the fish, but it's you get out of it what you put into it.
Right. And you've been crushing it at that. It's been cool to watch you with like your relationships and like helping investors, and that's why I wanted to have you on today is because your journey's been so crazy. Your house catching fire and burning down, rebuilding it, and then within like 5 years investing. Nothing drives me more crazy than agents trying to sell homes that don't own real estate or don't own their own home or are just getting into it. Like you have the history and the experience, like you've done it, and now you're like, hey, this is blessing my life. I'm going to go show how other people can like use it to bless theirs.
Right.
So, and you just got back from a trip this past week. Where did you go?
We went to Puerto Rico, the whole family. So
incredible.
No one fought, no one died. It was actually an awesome trip. I can't. We've never been on a big family vacation like that.
But that's what you're building, and we like cells, but that's not our end game. We're in real estate because we can buy properties that the longer you hold them and the sooner you get started, and that's like why I think you got this last one. You're just like, I just need another one under the belt because you've seen what it does over time. It's like you plant this tree and in the beginning, like, doesn't give you any fruit. It just is like annoying and you have to water it and take care of it. And
bad real estate investment in 10 years is a good real estate investment. The biggest thing is get started.
Right.
Just like you said. Like you always hear people say, man, if I knew now what I knew when I was 18, I would have bought everything. And it's the same.
Yeah, you're going to say the same thing 10 years from now.
Even if something doesn't appreciate, 10 years from now, that savings account, I mean, it's going to grow.
Oh,
You know, if you buy something when you're 20, it's going to be paid off if you make the everyday payments until you're 30.
Yeah.
Like, that's huge.
Real estate is the only asset class that I know that keeps up with inflation, appreciates. You can put somebody in there, they pay down your mortgage. There's just all these wins that you, like, most people don't even check off. So when you're like, oh, I'm breaking even, technically you're not breaking even because like $200 or $300, $400 of that payment is going towards the principal, paying down the mortgage, which is like a little side savings account that in 10 or 15 years you're going to look back on and be like, dang, like this is almost paid off or halfway paid off. And it's going to build you this lifestyle to where, you know, hey, I don't want to go work for the month of December or January. Like, let's go stay in Puerto Rico for a month. Like, you'll be able to have that lifestyle because you
sacrifice now.
Yep, you've set it up that way right now. So if you were to add up your wealth now from just over the past 5 years, it's impressive where else could have you gone out, leveraged money, bought these properties, they're paying for themselves, and now you're sitting on this portfolio that's actually quite impressive.
Well, and I think the biggest thing is not only how you get to that point, but how little risk there really is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the end of the day, real estate is so solid. Once you get started and once you get that initial foot in, like you never want to be upside down and backwards and anything. But it's hard, and there's times where it's like, we're on the edge, we're kind of nervous, but it is such a solid end game that I just can't describe it to people. Like I'm looking forward to getting old and seeing what it's become.
Yeah,
I'm not scared of that retirement anymore.
Right. So what's your plans moving forward? What's your goals?
See, my biggest goals is I want to get better at selling. Mm-hmm. So I've got the investing part. You know how to find deals. You know how to get stuff. I want to get better at selling, and the biggest thing I want to get better at selling is to people who want to do this. Mm-hmm. Like I've got a lot of friends that are, let's buy a house, and then they're like, I don't know. Let's do it. I don't know. Like I want to be able to get it to a way I can show them it's real. Like taste this nectar with me.
Right.
But that is the hardest thing to like drag someone to the promised land.
Right.
But I don't know.
Well, I think it takes a minute for them to realize what you're doing, and by the time they realize it, they're like, "Oh man, it's too late."
I'm too far behind.
It's never too late to get started. Even if, luckily, you and I when you started into this, you moved your family into a townhome. Like, you made the sacrifices. When I started, it was just me and Carr, and then as we had kids, like we were living in our fourplex units. We were just foregoing having that nice fancy home, newlyweds, not sharing walls, but like we lived in our units. And that propelled us. But there's still ways. I just had Ethan on the podcast, and he's on his fourth property, and he's buying like a $700,000 house that has 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and an office with an apartment in the basement. So like really, you can make any of these work. I have clients that have like little Airbnbs on their property. You can set this up to where any additional income is huge. And what I don't think people realize is the compound effect. Getting that $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month check just for like renting out a space on your property is addicting.
Yeah. That is great. It is.
And
it is.
You add it up. You add it up. And like, so what's the numbers? So $1,500 a month over 12 months, 18 grand. Where else can you get that? And then you're like, oh, I'll just go out and get a few more of these, and it just starts amplifying. So now you're up to how many rentals? Like 5 tenants that you have right now?
5 tenants right now that we're in.
And that's impressive. So you have all of those people paying you rent.
You think, $200-$300 cash flow. I mean, that's great. People look at that and they want $1,000 on their first one, and $200-$300 cash flow is huge. I even tell people sometimes
breaking even,
or having to pay. Think about this: if I have to pay $100, if I pay you $100, but you're making my mortgage and paying $400 to $500 a month toward my down payment. It's like a 401k. Think about that.
Right.
I pay the bank $100 to myself, my own property,
Right.
and my renter paid in here will pay $500.
Right. The deals are a little
It's
bit
scary.
Yeah.
But
The deals are a little bit harder, but I don't even know if they're that much harder because you look back and rents were so much lower, prices were lower, but like rents were lower. When we bought our fourplex, I remember freaking out because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're paying $500 a month per unit. Now those same units, we have them at $1,500 a month.
oh yeah,
So it's just crazy. But the moral of the story is the sooner you can like set your goals and be like, hey, this is the pathway I want to be on, and you get running with it, it just like ramps up and you get addicted to it real fast.
and the biggest, you talked about setting your goals and getting going. I have a friend, and I fed him this line. We went to the gym in the morning. Yes, I go to the gym sometimes every other week or so. And I told him, like, write it down, and you'll start being accountable for it. I mean, I wasn't, but I was telling him to do it. And sure enough, he was like, dude, I'm freaking more productive. He was, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but he's got an opportunity that just came up in his life that he never had before because he finally wrote it down and finally basically held himself accountable.
Well, and I think it just makes you aware. You write something down and you're like,
I
when
can't
you
miss-
want a new car or something and you're like, I really want a new F-350. Before you hadn't really paid much attention to them, but then you see them everywhere because you're like aware.
Right.
And I really believe the universe delivers what you think about and you write down and you expect, it gives you.
Or gives you the opportunity.
Right.
Right.
Or you create the opportunity.
Yes,
right?
that's true. Create the opportunity.
Yeah. So, no, this has been awesome. Any other advice or tips or things you want to tell people?
Just go for it.
Go
have
for it.
Have FOMO.
Yeah.
Try it. Worst case scenario, you get told no or it doesn't work out.
And if you're looking for a good agent, like Ben is the most, like you just had a closing and you were gone in Puerto Rico, so I went to the closing table. But the seller was like, man, Ben showed up at the house late at night, was helping me paint to get things ready, was helping me like trying to get things with the appraisal fixed. You were just in their corner 100% doing anything and everything you could. There with a dump trailer hauling off all their stuff. If you want somebody like that in your corner, Ben's your dude.
I am sarcastic, though.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm professional, but I have a weird way of showing it. So
No, this has been awesome. Thank you, Ben, for coming on. And till next time.
okay. See you guys.